Talking about Hebrew, we have to discuss and find out what makes a nation Hebrew, right? Okay, so one of the most fundamental principles or covenants would be the Abrahamic covenant. So here we go. The Abrahamic covenant that you find in Genesis 17:10, the Lord said, "This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you, the covenant you are to keep every male among you to be circumcised. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be a sign of the covenant between you and me." All right. So now, in the Hebrew language that's spoken now in Israel, Ivri language, the name Ivri means to cross over or pass over, and the name Ivri started, or Ivrit, I don't know how, I mean, there's variations of how they call it. So Ivri or Ivrit started as a result of the Abrahamic covenant, where God says they have to be circumcised, and once they became circumcised, they became Ivri, right? Meaning to cross over or to pass over. It also indicated a cutting. That's why the phallus had to be snipped a little to indicate that God had cut them aside from other nations. And now, let's see what the similarity is with the ABAGUSII. ABAGUSII, circumcision. Guess what it means? Iburu. Now you have Ivri and you have Iburu. Now note and remember that ABAGUSII do not have V. We use B instead. So instead of it being Ivri, it will be Iburu. Right? And that's how sometimes phonetic variations happen. We end with a U at the end, and the Ivris will end with an I, and that's what brings on that beautiful fabric of the differences in accents, and the different tribes of Israel all had different accents. Now in ABAGUSII, Ebururu means the butterfly, Nyabururu means a place of ascension. It's a place actually, and Iruruka means to fly. So the concept of ru implies to fly or to cross over. So if somebody says are they going for circumcision? Iburu, meaning they're becoming Iburu or Hebrew. So they are going to undergo circumcision. You say they're going for Iburu. Now, initiates of circumcisions are called Vare in ABAGUSII language. We call them Abare. Now, people who already who become Iburu, the people of Israel, are called Haaretz now, because ABAGUSII does not have H. We would substitute that for BH. So Vare Haaretz. See how that goes? And then at the end we gain the letter, and the phonetic conversions happen that way. And that's the beauty of accents, guys. So if somebody says Ngaya Bare, where are they? Initiates, right? So meaning that if you become Hebrew, you are a Haaretz or a Bare, because you become an initiate of the Abrahamic covenant and a receiver of that. So I have to say that for sure the ABAGUSII, just from that little indicator, ABAGUSII are definitely an Iburu nation, but we must have lost track somewhere. But I'll explain to you as we go on. Okay, now the name Abraham means father of multitudes, but father of multitudes, to me, I feel is an incomplete meaning. It's not the deeper meaning of it, because the name Abraham comes from the Hebrew word Afra. So it will become Afram. Before the blessing, his name was Afram, meaning the soil, clay, loam, soil. Afra. Now in my language it becomes Evara, meaning the consonants will change from A, P, R to E, B, R. And that's how phonetic variations happen. That's where you have Evra. You see, they say, ABAGUSII will say Evara, which then becomes Ephra. See that? Ephraim. So Evara, Ephara, Abraham. That's where the name comes from. Afra, meaning clay, loam, soil. Children of the clay, loam, children of the loam, clay, or soil, the brown children. Now, and then also remember that Afra was a name used in Greece to indicate somebody who was prosperous, or also a name used for black women. And I think that's where the name Aphrodite is born out of. Now, the second part of Abraham's name after the blessing kicks in, because his name was Ephraim or Afra, which means father of the loam, clay, or soil, right? Now, Ham is the second meaning, and Ham brings in a variant of that meaning. Ham means black or red or hot or burnt, but I'll explain why. The meaning seems to kind of, vary and morph a little, but I'll tell you why. Okay, so now Ham, Ham means warm, hot, or burnt. Hum or hum is a color is a color or pattern of coloration. Now that would then mean, a child who's light skinned can be called hum, a child, or meaning red, meaning that hum or a color pattern coloration would indicate a mixed child. Now in my language, when somebody is light skinned, we say they're red, omobadi, or we say omorabu, they're white. They're whiter skinned. See that? So we either use red or white to describe light complexion, and then black, would be for darker brown skin. So, so you have home and home, red or light skin, used for sheep and people. The ancient understanding of color variation in complexion, different from Western perception of color. It's true, and it ranges from white skinned to light brown to deep brown to a deep brown red. For example, red hair means it's brown red, just like some races would call brown hair red, or light brown hair would still be called red, or dirty blonde hair would still be called red, because Bantu languages and the Kagusi language are very utilitarian languages. We don't have colors for pink or indigo. We use what color palette we have, and our color palette, I want to say, is like 5 colors or something, but I'll talk about it later. So, and in some places they say the color hum, in Abarim they say that Jacob got, the sheep that were hum, red, and people are like, and one of the persons say that I doubt it would be red people. I argue it could be, because there was, because the ancients didn't describe color like we do now, and sometimes when they talk about sheep, they're really talking about humans. Jesus is a shepherd, right? And he became a shepherd of the people. So, okay, so then now I'm going to show you the agglutination of how, using various languages, of how cham is pronounced in various Afro-Asiatic languages. And chama means an organization in Swahili. Hama means to move around or unrest or relocate. Then you have Hamon, multitudes, many, mixed. Amo, together, mixed. That's Ekegusi. When you say Toreamo, meaning we're together. Amo. Hom means black, and that would be the Egyptian Metanteror. And Kemuamu or Kamuamu would be a dark-skinned person, black. And that's why Ham also means black. But it's an indicator of black more towards the red side. And then you have como, meaning together. And then you have com, meaning together. And you have homo, which is Latin. Now, note the difference here. Como is ekegusi, meaning together. And then you have com, Latin. And then you have homo, Latin, meaning man. But in this sense, I believe, because homo comes from the root word red, hom, I believe, indicates, the great, creation allegory. The first man was red, homo, red man. Hamba, together with, meaning to go along, and the Hamba, which is Sutu, means together or moving on with. So the concept of Hama implied children of a mixed race, those who, you know, mixed together, those who are together, those who are Amo, Hamo, Kamwamu. They're red and black, so meaning that the more Hamitic children were described to be more of red skin, but also Hamitic children got the name red because they allowed their children to pass through the fire, something that was very, you know, anti-Hebraic. So, but then when the blessing kicks in, God says, you become Abraham, father of multitudes, meaning the father of the brown children and the red children who are also black. See that? So Abraham is a combination, really. It's really an allegory of, you know, northern Africa, where the more Hamitic live, and then you have sub-Saharan Africa that carries the more dark-skinned Shemitic population. And I am a Shema, and I'll explain that later. In a nutshell, I would say that Abraham really does, you know, as a collective term would mean then father of the red and the black ones, or father of the melanated ones. That's just simply what it means. That is really the denotative meaning of what Abraham means. But remember that hom or homo covers red man. Now, there are Africans who are of white skin, Caucasian looking Africans that have never been to Europe. They have nothing to do with Europe, because Africa is the mother. You know, the Amazighs. I've seen pictures of Amazighs, and some of them have like blue eyes and green eyes with very white skin and blonde hair. Africans who've never been to Europe have nothing to do with Europe. And the concept of Hama always implied that redness. So and that population, I feel, represents the white population. So Abrahamic covenant will then in essence cover, you know, both black and white. Now, because the fundamental meaning of what the Abrahamic covenant covered was the melanated children, but under the blood of Jesus, you know, it covers everybody. So, but the initial firstborn meaning was that he was the father of the melanated nations. Father of the melanated nations. Now, remember, you guys remember what I told you about Abraham and where the name Abraham comes from. His name is Afra, right? It comes from the root word Afra, clay, loam, or soil. Now, let's find out what the meaning of Africa is using ABAGUSII and other languages, and see how this language was agglutinated and conflated into a language. And that was the importance of Mtunetoror, because a symbol could be understood in Asia or Africa or in the Americas. The beauty of hieroglyphs is that it accommodated all those kinds of accents and all kinds of pronunciations. So Afra, of course, name given to women of black descent, or clay, loam, soil. And the church is also described as feminine. So Africa is kind of weird. It's described as a female, but sometimes as a father also. So it's one of those androgynous continents that I don't really understand, but I'll explain why. Because being born of a second primordial energy, you would have to have both masculine and feminine qualities. But I'll explain that later. Alright, so we have Afra, and then we have Rika. Now, in ABAGUSII, Rika has various meanings. And the first is, so it means to write, to count, to measure, to weigh, or to wrestle. Now, and then you have Lika. Now, notice the phonetic conversion from Rika to Lika. Now, that's Hindu Sanskrit. In that Sanskrit, Lika means to write, from the root word that means scratch. And then we have Rika, which is Arabic kind of calligraphy. It's a system of writing. It's in Arabic, And then we have Rika, Swahili. And I want to say there are also other Bantu tribes that I've had say Rika. And Rika really represents a cohort of circumcision sets or groups, right? So then Afrika as a conflated meaning would then mean Afra, you know, Mama Africa, or the continent Africa, Afra, and there which represents the African land of the dark man. But it's also meaning that Africa then to move over to Rika would mean then it's the brown man of wrestle, the brown man of measure, the brown the brown man of counting, or the brown man of circumcision or exits or groups. Now, note this, that when we talk about the mother continent of brown black people, of writing, which is Rika, meaning Africa was known as a place of education. It was a metropolitan educational center in Timbuktu and Egypt, and there were so many other places. So Africa was, you guys believe it or not, Africa was known as a land of writing, Afra, Rika. Now, it was also known as the mother continent or brown land of counting or measure, the mother continent of brown land or brown black land of wrestle, the mother continent of brown black land of circumcision or age sets and age groups. Meaning that, now guys note, from the third definition where you have the counting, measure, wrestle, and circumcision, brings out the old allegory of Abraham, meaning that God told Afra, right, when he told him to look up to the stars before the Abrahamic covenant was sealed, he said, Afra, can you reckon the stars? Meaning that God, even God was highly aware, using the ABAGUSII definition, God was highly aware that you can't really count the stars. So that's why he used a term like Rika that implied measure as in fluid, right? Which is Rika. Measure as in count. Measure as in write. See that? Write down for me. Can you tabulate the number of the stars? Can you measure? So Afrika. And Afrika, the last definition being the land of wrestle, I believe, would embody that meaning in Jacob, because Jacob wrestled God. And Jacob was a man of wrestle. So Africa became the continent of wrestle. I mean, is it no wonder we still have wars based on resources? And mainly it's the European nations that are fighting for those resources in Africa. So Africa is the land of wrestle, it's the land of counting, it's the land of age sets and age groups. Now, that whole allegory of what Africa is really represents the allegory of Abraham. And the ancient languages would put this together if only we paid attention some more.